All right, in this video, we are going to look at solving inequalities. Now, the great thing is solving inequalities follows the same process as solving equations. So for the most part, it's exactly like solving equations. So we think of the inequality sign as just like an equal sign. For the most part. There's going to be one case that we're going to talk about it, and then we generally graph them as well. But for the most part, they follow the same process. So right here, I have x minus 15 is greater than a negative 12. Well, the greater than symbol, we just think of like the equal sign. We can draw our line right through that. And all we do is the opposite, just like before. So here I have a minus 15. So we are going to add 15 to both sides. A negative 15, think negative 15 plus 15 cancels out. We're left with x. We still write our greater than symbol. And then negative 12 plus 15 is going to be a 3. So we get x is greater than 3. Now we generally will graph these as well. There's not a number line here. So what I usually do is if I don't have a number line, I make a little one. I put that number that we're working with right in the middle. It doesn't have to start at 1 or 0. It can look just like that. I then have to see, okay, it's just the greater than symbol. So we do an open circle. And we want x values to be greater than 3. And so it's going to look like that. There's our graph. We'll do this one right here. I have x plus 6 is greater than or is less than or equal to 6. So think of it like an equal sign. I have a plus 6 here, so we are going to do the opposite and subtract 6. These go away. We get x is less than or equal to 6 minus 6 is 0. We can get an answer of 0. That's okay. X is just less than or equal to 0. We go to our number line. We have to make one here. I put 0 right in the middle. 1. Put a couple numbers around it. Then I go to my 0. Open circle or closed circle, I think. It's going to be a closed circle because it has that equal to part. And we want x values to be less than 0. So we're going to go to the left. Less than left. All right, a couple more with adding and subtracting. Draw our line if we want, right there. We want to get t all by itself, so we are going to subtract 2 from both sides. Those go away. We get t is less than 4 minus 2, which is just 2. Go to graph it. Draw our little number line. 2, 3, 4, 1, 0. Put our number that we're working with in the middle. Open circle or closed circle, I ask myself, well, I don't have the equal to sign, so we're going to do an open circle. And I have t is less than 2. Less than, going to the left. All right, last one. We have y minus 4 is greater than or equal to negative 2. We're going to add 4 to both sides. That helps draw that line right through the middle. Those go away. We get y is greater than or equal to negative 2 plus 4 is a 2. Draw a number line. I'm going to put 2 in the middle again. Put a couple numbers around it. Oops, that's just a 1. I go to my 2. I have an equal to, so it's going to be a filled in circle. And y values are greater than. So the numbers bigger than 2 go that way. All right, so when are we going to see this? we have write an inequality and solve it for the following situation. So it says you have a phone with 64 gigabytes of memory. You have used 48 gigabytes of memory. You want to add music to your phone. What are the possible amounts of music you can add? We know that the most we can have is 64 gigabytes. So that's the most we can have. We have 48 gigabytes used, but we want to add music. So maybe we add M. So we have to think, what number is going to be bigger? Well, the capacity of the phone is 64 gigabytes. So that has to be the greatest amount. So then you have to think, can we add 64 gigabytes? Can we have exactly 64 gigabytes? Yeah, you can use up every single piece of memory on that phone. So we can include 64. So now all we do is solve this for M, or whatever variable you used. So draw our line down the middle. I want to get M all by itself, so I have to get rid of this 48. So we're going to subtract 48 from both sides. If those go away, we get M is less than or equal to 64 minus 48 is going to be 16. And there is our solution. All right, these were all adding and subtracting, so now we're going to look at our one-step multiplication and division. But before we do that, I want to think about something before. When we solve equations, we always do the opposite. So one of the things that we have to do is we were doing adding and subtracting, and things seemed fine. But I want to examine what happens when we multiply or divide by a negative number. So I have the inequality right here. 3 is greater than 1, which I think about, and I agree with that. 3 is greater than 1. But now let's think, what if I have to divide or multiply both of those numbers by a negative number? So sometimes we have to do that. As we've seen before, it always equals out to be the same thing. So let's look at, what if I multiply both sides by a negative 2? Negative 2 times 3 is a negative 6. 1 times negative 2 is a negative 2. Now, generally, we would just bring our inequality sign down, but as I think about that, negative 6 is greater than negative 2. Well, that's not true. If I have a number line, negative 6 is down here, negative 2 is here, 0 is maybe there. So negative 6 is not greater than negative 2, it's less than. So what happens when we multiply, and we're going to see in just a second, or divide by a negative number, the sign flips. Oops, that only gets one S. The sign flips. So instead of it being 3 greater than 1, if I multiply both sides by a negative number, we switch the sign, and now it's negative 6 is less than negative 2. Anytime we multiply or divide, we flip the sign. Let's see if that happens over here as well. I have 4 and 6, so I'm going to divide both of those by a negative 2. 4 is less than 6. I agree with this statement. So 4 divided by negative 2 is a negative 2. I'm going to write it over here. And 6 divided by a negative 2 is a negative 3. Well, normally we would just carry the sign over and it would look like this. -2 is less than -3. Well, -3 on that number line right here is right here. Is negative, so we think, is -3 less than, I'm sorry, is -2 less than -3? No, -2 is greater than -3. So we flip that sign. Now this only happens if we are multiplying or dividing by a negative number. If I multiply or divide by a positive number, everything works out the same. But if it's a negative number, then we flip it. So let's solve some of these. We did all of our graphing on the front, so we're just gonna solve these. I have x divided by 3 is less than -2. So the number I want to get by itself is x. So I have to get rid of this 3. We're dividing by 3, so I'm going to multiply both sides by 3. 3 divided by, or 3 times, it's really 3 divided by 3. Those cancel out. We're left with x. -2 times 3 is a -6. Now, remember, when you multiply or divide, and I'm going to put both sides here. Let's insert that there. Both sides by a negative number, then we flip the sign. So notice this sign I didn't multiply by a negative number. This side did have one in there, but it doesn't change. So our inequality is still just going to look like this. Sometimes we might have something like this. -3/4 w is greater than or equal to 3. Now, we can divide by -3/4, or remember, dividing by a fraction is the same thing as multiplying by the flipped fraction. So we'll write it like that. Then what happens is those cancel out, those cancel out. So I have to do the same thing over here. We're going to multiply by the 4 over -3. W. Now notice 4 times 3 is 12. 12 divided by a -3 is going to be a -4. Now this number is negative that I multiplied both sides by. So that means we are going to flip our inequality because of what we just talked about. All right, -9y is less than 6 or equal to 63. So we're going to divide both sides by a -9 up, dividing both sides by a negative number. That means we're going to flip that sign. We have a y over here. 63 divided by 9 is going to be a -7. Lastly, 5x is less than 25, or is greater than 25, sorry. So we want to get the x all by itself, so we're going to divide both sides by 5. No negatives in this one, so we don't have to worry about flipping that sign. It gets to stay the same. 25 divided by 5 is 5. X is greater than 5. All right, just remember, if you multiply or divide both sides by a negative number, then you flip the sign. Otherwise, everything is exactly the same as how we solved regular equations. Sometimes we'll be asked to graph, but other than that, it's exactly the same.